Good evening to everyone. Welcome to 7 Days 7 webinars on wildlife on the occasion of Wildlife Week 2024, conducted by Aganashini Nature Foundation. I hope you all attended previous webinars. This is the sixth webinar on the occasion of Wildlife Week 2024. So today we have webinar on elusive cats and way to protect them, exploring the hidden world of small cats by Divyashree Rana. Currently, she is pursuing PhD scholar at NCBS Bangalore. She is a molecular ecologist who work on understanding the elusive world of small cats. Their research tries to understand how small carnivores navigate fragmented landscapes in India using geospatial and genetic tools. Alongside her work, she would describe herself as a novice baker who enjoys playing sports and reading fiction. I request Divyashree to take over the session, please.
Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Vaishnavi, for the introduction. Just let me know if my screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible. You can move.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining. And it's really exciting to be talking to so many people, especially because I think very few people know about small cats, and it's a very interesting world. And I hope by the end of my presentation, you know a little bit more about them. And like me, you are also excited to study and understand more about them. So hello everyone, I am Divyashree Rana. I am currently a PhD student at NCBS Bangalore. And today I'll be talking about small cats in general, but also some of my work that I'm pursuing I did as part of my master's and as my PhD, which is going on. So to begin with, this is a beautiful picture from Corbett of a tiger. And when we look at this picture, we think of this majestic animal that prowls the jungle, and it's known as the king of the jungle. Many say this is the first animal you think of if someone asks, think of an animal. But today I would like you to introduce to a different world, a world which is in the same area where the tiger roams around, but there are multiple hidden denizens in the same landscape, which we often ignore or forget to look at. And this is the elusive world of small cats. And just like how I tried to camouflage them in this image and we fail to notice them, this is how the reality of small cats is. They are there in the same jungles, in the same area where tigers and leopards live, and we all want to know them, photograph them, etc. But we often miss out these amazing creatures. They live right there, but they are much more elusive. So with this, to begin with, what are small cats? There are many, many more small cats, but I would like to begin with these four small cats that I just showed, because these are the ones that I also work on, and they have very interesting traits about them. To begin with, fishing cat. I have separate love for fishing cat because I started my work with fishing cat. It's been almost 5 years since I've been studying fishing cat. And as the name suggests, if you have a cat at home, you would know cats are not really fond of water. But this species is really special because unlike most of the other cats, it loves water. It is found in these wetland habitats where there's some vegetation alongside some river or lake, etc. And as the name suggests, fishing cat, it actually hunts and swims and hunts fishes for survival, and that's why the name comes. And even though India has almost 40% of its global range, you can see these gray blobs in the map of India. That's where the fishing cat is found. So even though we have it in India, it's in very small, tiny patches across the extremities of the country, and that's where you have to find them. But in these patches itself, fishing cat is found in very different kind of habitats. So in the East Coast, it mostly lives around mangroves, but in the northern part of the country, it lives in these kind of habitat, which is called as floodplains. These are the plains that get flooded by water, and after monsoon, the water goes away. So it's very interesting to see how this kind of species survives in very different kind of landscapes. But that's not the only interesting species we have. The other exciting species is rusty spotted cat. I'm sure not many of you would know about it, and it might be the first time you have ever looked at the picture. But the name comes from these rust color spots that's on the body of this cat. And unlike the fishing cat, it's actually found quite a lot in India. It has a wide distribution. But what's really special is it is almost half the size of a domestic cat. It's just like 1 to 1.2 kgs. It weighs only that much, and you can understand how difficult it would be to find or even study these kind of species in the wild, which is half the size of your domestic cat. And these, what's even more special is, even though it has a wide distribution across India, Indian subcontinent is the only place where you can find the species, which is the smallest species of wildcat found in the world. So India, Sri Lanka, and Nepal are the only places which you can find them. And it's really sad, as Indians, most of us would not know about it. And this is the first species I was introduced to, and I was always fascinated by rusty spotted cat and small cats after that. The other species which is more close to home for all of us is leopard cat, which is found extensively in Western Ghats and the north and northeastern part of the country, which is very specialized to these close canopy habits. So, like tall forest, evergreen forest, they're only found there. And you might be thinking that how come this species is found in the south and the northeast but absent from the center of the country? How could that happen? How could this kind of distribution exists? And very interestingly, a study came in 2010 which suggested that 20,000 years back, during the last glacial maxima, maybe the temperatures of the Indian Deccan Plateau rose, and the only habitable regions were towards the Western Ghat and the Northeast. That's why the species couldn't survive and disappeared from here. So with this, you can think of how sensitive this species could be to climate change, and hence this different looking pattern, which you would never expect that it being there, but it's been missing for the 2,000 kilometers in between. And lastly, something that's very common, which I hope many of you might have seen, is a jungle cat. So unlike all these other species, jungle cat is extensively found in India. It's like one of the biggest range countries for jungle cat. And very interestingly, you actually don't have to go to the forest to find this species. The long legs of jungle cat has it adapted for these grassland habitats, which also means that it can survive very well in agriculture fields. So it is much more closer to home. Many of us, if you go to rural habitats, you might be able to see jungle cat along with jackals. But so as you see, these are just the four species, but they have very wide adaptations. They are found in very different habitats, although even though across the country, but they are specialized to their micro habitats. But actually the world of wildcats is much, much more diverse. Just look at this picture. These are all the cats that are found in world. There are more than 40 to 45 species of wild cats found across the globe. And in India, we are really lucky to be having 16 of the cat species. I'm sure none of you would imagine that we have so many cat species, because we mostly hear about the tigers and the leopards. But apart from that, there are like 12 other species of small cats that also live across the country, which we don't know of. And India is the highest diversity. India has highest diversity of wild cats globally. So this, if there's a place where people should be studying wildcats and should know about it, this is definitely that place. And how this diversity came to be is a very interesting story. So unlike other species that you might have heard of, mammals like your deer or bears or whales and dolphins, they are very old species. So there's some time frame known as Miocene. So in the late Miocene, all this radiation of cats happened, and that's when the cats emerged and became so many species. And that's around 10 to 11 million years old. So for us, 10 to 11 million years old might seem like a lot, but in a evolutionary time scale, it's a very small chapter. So from an evolutionary point of view, these are actually very young species. And it is really exciting to see how this young taxa has become so diverse, is found everywhere. Apart from Antarctica, they are found on all continents. So it's very exciting to see that how this came to be, how this recently emerged taxa is successful and is top predator across the globe. So this diversity can be broken down into 8 lineages. Big cats only form a single lineage, which, as you can see, is the Panthera lineage, which are the oldest. So it is hypothesized that cats originated from Asia, that first the big cats came, and from them, from Asia, small cats came to be, and they distributed across the globe due to multiple migration routes. But rest 7 lineages of cats are like actually small cats. Isn't it ironic that 80% of the diversity is formed by small cats, which so few of us are studying or even know about? So I really wanted you to see that how much the diversity is and how little we know of it. So big cats and small cats are not just the size, but they are evolutionarily very distinct and can be divided into subfamilies of Pantherinae and Feline. But what's even more exciting is India doesn't just have the numbers. We have representative species from six of these lineages. And with the extension of cheetah coming back to India, we have species from seven lineages. So apart from this ocelot lineages, which is restricted to South America, we literally have cats which are very different from each other and are present in all the habitats. But the exciting thing about big cat and small cat is not their size, which many people think it is, but actually it is classified based on how they make noise. So we have all heard about the roaring of the lion. You can hear it like 5 miles across. But the thing is, lions can roar, like the big cats can roar, and the small cats, if you have a domestic cat like I have at home, you must have heard the deep purring sound, the deep vibrating sound, and they can purr. So excitingly, the big cats can roar and they cannot purr, and vice versa for the small cats, which can purr but cannot roar. And in between them is this iconic species known as clouded leopard for these cloud shaped blotches on its body, which is somewhere in between the big cats and the small cats, because it is known as the linkage species for big cats and small cats, and it can neither purr nor roar. Doesn't mean that it cannot make sound, but it just cannot make these two sounds. And how they make this sound is because of a single bone that is in the throat. We also have it called the Adam's apple, but uh, the big cats have it in cartilaginous form, like it is soft bone, and hence they can open their jaw and make a roaring sound. And for the small cats, it has become ossified. It has become like a bone, and hence it can only vibrate and cannot stretch. And for the clouded leopards, because they're in between, it is neither completely ossified, neither completely cartilaginous, hence they cannot make that sound. So it's very interesting what is shown in the DNA and how the evolution works can also be seen in these very real anatomical signs that everyone can see and observe. So with that, like the cheetah and the puma, they're all small cats because they cannot roar, and the big cats cannot purr. But that's not all the exciting things about cats in general. Like for small cats, we know very little, and what we know are these cool anecdotal stories about which we know of the world of small cats. Like if some of you have come across this picture, this is a picture from the early 1900s from, I think so, somewhere in Rajasthan. And you might have heard that how the Mughals and in the colonial India, the royals used to take cheetah for hunting. There's another this species which many of you might not recognize, which also the royals used for hunting, especially for hunting partridges like game birds, and this is known as the caracal. So in the early 1900s, when people were training and taming these species, this caracal, to live alongside humans and help in hunting, it's so ironic to think that now caracals is one of the rarest species found in the Indian subcontinent. So if there's any species that the photographers would go crazy about actually filming or recording, it is the caracals. It's that hard to even see, let alone study. We don't know how many they are, where they are, what restricts them, how they are faring. And some people say this after cheetah, this might be the next extinction event that we actually might see. And 100 years back, they were living alongside humans, and they have now completely disappeared. Another interesting story is of this cat, and if you will see like this cat that looks of similar size, have different coat color patterns, but very excitingly, these are actually not six different species. They're all color morphs of a single species known as golden cat. Now we know that golden cat is not just golden, which is the form in the second picture, but they can also have multiple other colors. And this happens with multiple other species where people mistake two different coat color patterns as two different species. For example, the common leopard and the black panther that people call the melanistic leopard are actually the same species. It's just a single spelling mistake in your DNA which changes the coat color of your body, and hence you look different. And for this golden cat, in this study in 2019 done in Arunachal Pradesh, in a single valley, they found that there are six different color morphs of a single species found in the same jungle, and we had no clue about it. We didn't even still now we have no clue that why it must be happening. Is it some advantage for hunting? Is it related to elevation? Does it have an advantage, or is it just a spelling mistake? We have no clue about it. So about small cats, most we know are these kind of anecdotal interesting stories, and every now and then these kind of pictures surface and attract many people to know more about them or go on expeditions to photograph them. But the reality is, actually understanding what's happening with them is really difficult. And that's specifically because it's very hard to study them. These are very elusive species. We know very little about the natural history. Hence, we are at a disadvantage on where to study them and how to study them. So generally, to study small cats, there have been like these are the three commonly used tools and techniques. First is a camera trap. All the pictures most of the pictures I have shown is from camera traps, and many of you would know about it. So camera trap are these motion triggered cameras that you can deploy in the forest, and at the time when humans are not there and when animals are actually active, they'll click pictures. And most of the things we know about their lives is through these camera traps, which can function without us, and we can retrieve the data at the end of the day. On the extreme end is radio collar. It works very differently. You have to catch the animal, you have to put the collar on them. But once you do that, the kind of information you will get would be amazing. These are GPS tagged radio collars, so you would know exactly where the species is moving, how it is moving. And without this, it is impossible to do this, because you cannot actually follow them around that you could do like for a cheetal or a sambar. That's just not possible. And in between these two tools are genetic tools, in which we extract the DNA from the animal and try to understand features. And I think so this is something that many of you might not be aware of, and this is where I work. So as she introduced, I'm a molecular ecologist, so I try to use genetic tools to understand how the species are doing in the wild. And you would be amazed to see what all you can understand just by DNA. So as you might have guessed, it can help you in identify species, but it can also help you in identify individuals of the same species. So you would be able to differentiate between um, two jungle cat A and B. It will help you in understanding diet. So what the species is eating, you can get at that, and that's very important ecological information to see how they are faring. You can also understand the health of population. So genetics is a amazing tool in which the population would have certain metrics, like how much genetic variation is there, how similar the individuals are to each other, and based on that you can categorize, is the population healthy or not, which is very important for conserving and prioritizing populations. But lastly, you can also use this to understand movement, and this might come as a shock to many people. How can you use DNA to understand movement? But it would become clear just in a while. So how exactly you do this is, once you have a DNA, what we try to do is we try to literally magnify and see what's there on the DNA. So if you look closely enough, your DNA is like a book of life. Everything you are and how you function is written in your book of life using just these four letters, ATGC. And my DNA would look different from your DNA, and your parents' DNA would also look different. But your DNA would be much similar to your parents' DNA as compared to my DNA. So just a minute back, I was telling you about how we use this to understand movement. How we actually do this is we try to get samples from different populations, and then we try to see how similar the DNA from individuals of two different populations are. If it is very similar, that means that individuals are moving from one population to another. That means whatever is in between those two jungle patches or habitat patches is not actually hindering movement. But on the other hand, if the DNA is very dissimilar, you know that no movement is happening in between them. So it is a different roundabout way in which you cannot actually see them moving, but you can infer movement using similarity of the genetic code, which is what I also use for my research work. But another interesting fact is, you might think like, if I give you blood sample or tissue samples, you would be able to do all this. But it is actually possible to answer these kind of complex questions even with environmental DNA, like DNA which is when the pug marks, when if you have gone to the forest, you would see these big tiger pug marks. You can actually collect soil from those samples, and it could tell you many things about the tiger. And similarly, you can tell a lot from hair samples, fecal samples, and that really helps to study wild populations, because you can imagine it is not easy to catch these animals, but it is definitely easy to find their signs, collect their fecal samples without disrupting them and their behavior, and you can still answer these questions. And this is exactly what I did for my work, where bringing back the fishing cat, if you remember, this is the water loving cat, and I collected their fecal samples to answer some very important questions. If you would remember, this is how the distribution map of the fishing cat looks, where in the gray are those tiny areas where the cat is present. So I literally followed the cat. I went wherever the cats are present, and I was trying to answer one very simple question, that the distribution that you see, is it because the cat is actually not present, or is it because the cat is very rare and we have failed to detect them everywhere else? So it might be present everywhere, but we just don't know because we are not looking for them, or we fail to notice them, and maybe that's why we are seeing this pattern. But how vulnerable it is to extinction, what the conservation value is, depends on the fact how much of a threat the cat is in. So if the case would have been that the fishing cat was everywhere but we just don't know about it, when I extracted genetic material from these samples, this is how the graph should look like, that everything should be similar because they are moving across and there are many of them. So all the samples should look similar to each other. But what I found was not like that. What I found was that samples from different locations actually were very different, which means that the fragmented population that we think the species has is actually the case. The species has very fragmented populations, and individuals might not be able to move from one habitat to another habitat, which makes them very prone to extinction. And from these samples collected across 4 states, if you try to club them to form where exactly they are moving or which populations are completely isolated, this is what you get. So you see these large green dot, this is the southernmost population of the species in the country, the Andhra Pradesh population. And you see these Andhra Pradesh individuals are really, really different from rest of the individuals from the country. So you know that they are at the last tip and they don't share any connectivity movement from other populations. On the other hand, the populations in West Bengal and Odisha seem to form a same cluster, which makes sense because geographically they are nearby. But a very interesting thing was that they share some similarity with the individuals found in Terai, UP, which you would not have expected, which I didn't expect. And we were trying to understand why this could be. So in the past 10 or 15 years, we have started seeing this random records of one photo capture of fishing cat here and there from Bandhavgarh, Panna, the kind of places we never thought they were in, but we have started seeing records. And these kind of results make us question that maybe in the past they were all connected as a big population, and there the Andhra Pradesh population really became different, but others might have some similarity, but it is lost or we are losing it currently. So understanding these tiny dots becomes so much more important, and it would be very interesting to see where they fit in this picture. But this kind of understanding just from fecal samples for a species which has never been studied before, like genetic work has been like absolutely limited for fishing cat, is possible. And these are the questions we can answer which have a lot of significance. But the only challenge is answering these kind of questions requires a lot of optimizing of these genetic tools. So this is only possible using fecal DNA, because you should know where in the DNA, where in that book of life you should zoom in and see, so that you would be able to answer these questions. So for every species that might not be same. So if you have to look at position A for species A, it might be position B for species B. That makes it a tough task. So every time you pick a new species, and there are so many small cats, you might have to redesign and rebuild these tools. And as part of my PhD work, what I did was I designed this multi-species tool called Feliplex, which is a genetic tool which would allow you to answer similar kind of questions for all species of cat using single tool. So now if someone else wants to do similar study on rusty spotted cat, they won't have to reinvent the wheel to design these set of tools to look at rusty spotted cat. They can use the same set of tools and answer the same set of questions for multiple species of cats. And the hope was that this would allow people, more and more people, to actually undertake small cat research, which is currently not happening. And because limitation of tool was a big factor. Uh, But now that we have some idea of how to study them and what exactly you can do, different ways to study them, a very important question that I have skipped till now is it even important to study and conserve small cats? What are you getting out of it? We have all heard that by saving tiger, you save the jungle. Like it is the umbrella species, and if the tiger is not there, the entire ecosystem would collapse. But these are such small species. So is there any value in trying to save them? So to answer that question, I want to show you this. So this was a recent study done by scientists in USA, which actually tried to answer the same question, that what are the reasons why people should try to study and conserve small cats and what value they have. And they actually found that they are even better than big carnivores in suggesting what's happening in changing landscapes. As we all know, habitat fragmentation is increasing, humans are increasing, there's more and more encroachment and pressure on natural habitats. In these kind of scenarios, these small carnivores, like small cats, can actually be very useful in telling you how the ecosystem is functioning. For example, they have small home range, they need less resources, and hence they are much more like abundant than the big carnivores, which need more resources. They have higher reproductive rates. That means their generations move faster. So the change in a small cat would can be witnessed faster than tiger, which lives longer and reproduces slowly. They're also very central in the food web. Even though tiger is the king of the jungle, in that jungle there are multiple microhabitats like wetlands and grasslands and forests. And in those specialized habitats, many other smaller species live, and they play a very important role in controlling that ecosystem. As we have gone over it, they're very diverse and species rich. 80% of the cats are actually small cats, and they also occupy a lot of niches, like different kind of habitats, because these species have recently emerged and they so quickly became so successful compared to so many other species. That means that they were successful in adapting to these tiny niches which they didn't have to share, or there was less competitive pressure. So they occupy a lot of niches. And lastly, you won't imagine because we don't see them, but they are much more closer for you to observe and study, because they can be found in your backyard. But it is very difficult in most of the cases to find a leopard in your backyard, but it is very easy to find a leopard cat or a jungle cat in your backyard, because they can survive in these human habitated areas as well. So with this, what are the biggest challenges for these small cats? Because we have now established it's important to conserve them, as it is the case for most of the wildlife globally. Habitat destruction is the biggest factor, and as I was saying, they occupy so many niches. Any kind of habitat that is getting lost is affecting one or the other small cat species. But apart from these blanket problems which exist for many species, there are also very specific problems that exist for specific species of small cat. For example, this gruesome picture is of a fishing cat that was killed. So fishing cats in Andhra and West Bengal live very close to human habitation, these small settlements, and these small settlements actually have local um, ponds, fish ponds, where they rear fishes, and they have these aquaculture practices where they consume the fish and also sell the fish. So this is their main livelihood for humans. And fishing cats are known to steal from that ponds, and that kind of interaction often results in pictures like this, where the fishing cats are killed. And this is not a one-off case. In Howrah, one district in West Bengal, in a single year, 30 odd individuals were recorded to be dead because of retaliatory killing. So 30 individuals is a big number even for a small cat, and this is just the reporting. So many times, most of the times, these kind of incidents are not reported. So retaliatory killing is a big problem for cats that have conflict with humans. The second is hunting poaching. So in many parts of the country, there are these local festivals where local people in masses enter the forest and kill whatever they find. It is a festival for them, but because of that, most of the times what they find are these small carnivores. And even though strict laws are in place, they are checked less, and their absence are reported less, and hence jungle cat, fishing cat, leopard cat often get killed as part of these rituals and festivals. Pet trade. Just look at them. They are so cute, and specifically, rusty spotted cat is like owning a kitten that never grows into a big cat. So that's why it's not surprising that they are part of pet trade. And in many of the places, like because these rusty spotted cats are found near agricultural fields, many times while harvesting, people might find these kittens and thinking they are normal cat, they just keep it at their home. But this kind of thing disrupts their natural behavior, disrupts the population, and it is overall dangerous for the species. But apart from pet trade, which also happens systematically but on local level, there's also systematic illegal wildlife trade. And it is amazing to think, like, I myself, studying small cats for 5 years now, have not seen almost 90% of them. But these poachers are so skilled at finding these cats hidden deep inside the forest in northeast that they often kill them for their beautiful coat color patterns, and their fur is known to be softer as compared to big cats, and hence they are often targeted to this kind of activities. And lastly, a threat which many people are not thinking about is hybridization with domestic cats. So you look at this, this is not a domestic cat. This is a European wildcat, and similar, looking very similar to this, we also have an Asiatic wildcat, which is found in the western part of the country. And because they look so similar and they are like phylogenetically, evolutionary, very similar to domestic cats, there's a lot of hybridization happening. And it might be happening in India also, in Asia also, but no one is looking at that, of course. But in Europe, this is a big problem, and many people are studying that. And especially in Scotland, they found that all of their wild cats, their DNA, 60% of their DNA looks like domestic cat. So before you even start knowing about the species, it might just dissolve into a domestic cat. So there are multiple sorts of problems which are specific to certain species, certain landscapes which are going through. So these species need to be conserved, but to answer where to conserve them, how to conserve them, it's important to answer where they are, how they live, how to study them. But those kind of, we don't even have those preliminary understanding about the species. And this happens mostly because these species share the habitats with humans. So unlike places in North America and Africa, where there are these big swaths of natural habitats which are untouched and away from human settlements, India is not like that. All our natural habitats, be it forests, grasslands, are very close to a plantation, which is very close to an agricultural field, which is very close to where people live. So it's all a mosaic of tiny, tiny habitats in between human modified landscapes. And because of this, these species often come in close contact with humans. And unlike their bigger counterparts, like the big cats, which everyone notice, and of course, if a leopard is going around, people will notice and action would be taken. If a leopard cat is going around, many times action would not be taken and no one would notice, and they might just die out of roadkill or caught by poachers, etc. So awareness is very important about the species, but it is also important to understand how they're actually navigating these landscapes, because we know nothing about them. And this is also part of my PhD work, which I'm trying to understand. That I work in this area called Terai. These are the floodplains found in the northern border of India, bordering Nepal. As you can see, the red boundary. And these are the 4 protected areas in light green. And as you can see, unlike, let's say, Western Ghats, where outside protected areas also there are forests, in, you can imagine, in UP, with so much of agricultural and human pressure, there are no forests outside protected areas. So it is all fields. And in this intense landscape of roads and humans and agriculture, 6 species of cats are found. And everyone is interested in knowing what's happening to tigers and leopards there, but most of the people don't even know that 4 species of small cats are found there. So this is part of my PhD work. Using genetic tools, I'm trying to understand how these species are actually navigating this landscape. Having a road in between, does it even affect them? Does it affect the tiger and rusty spotted cat in a similar way? Because till the time we don't know how animals are living outside protected areas, which is the case mostly with small cats, it is very difficult to say what you should do. If you ask me tomorrow, should there be a road or not? If settlements come here, would it be harmful or not? I have no answers because we don't know. But hopefully, by the end of the study, and as more and more people start studying them, we would have answers to these kind of questions, which is very important to actually save them. And to do this, we actually walk the forest, look for these fecal samples, which doesn't affect the animals at all, and we can answer these very important questions using genetic tools. But research is definitely limited for small cats, but thankfully for conservation there are a few initiatives in India itself. There are like these working groups, networks of people working on fishing cat, rusty spotted cat, and Manolis Pala's cat, which is found in snow leopard habitats in Leh Ladakh. So people have come together and they are doing a lot of conservation work outside the India. Much more conservation work is happening, but the central question still remains, like, how do you conserve species in areas and so many species when you don't know how they behave, when you don't know where they exist? So the research is the lacking part, and I hope by this effort initiative, some of you who did not know about small cats would found it interesting, like I found it interesting when I first came across them, and some more people would be interesting in taking up understanding about these species. So you would be amazed to know that there are very few people actually working on small cats. We have 16 species of cats in India. I don't think so we even have 16 researchers working on small cats, and that's how dire the situation is. But I hope with more and more attention, more and more people like you would be interested in taking up these studies, and I would be more than happy to um, talk to you and suggest what can be done, what cannot be done, if you are interested in knowing more about small cats. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for such a wonderful session. Now the session is open for discussion. If you have any questions, you can ask the speaker by unmuting yourself or by dropping message in the chat box.
Hello,
Hello.
you can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Kiran. I am from South India, Kerala. There is something very striking thing what you mentioned is about hybridization of species, and due to hybridization, the species decline. This is something really, really new for me. I never
Yes.
think of a species decline due to hybridization. Thank you for that one. And then my question is very simple. These species of wild cats, they live in social or in isolation? They are social animals.
No, these are not social animals. Most of the predators are not social animals. They live in isolation, and they only come together during mating.
Okay, but the house cats, they used to be like socialized, right? Or
Yeah, it's just like house cat has so much resources, so it doesn't have to compete.
to fight.
In
Okay,
the
okay.
Yeah, in the wild, most of the predators mostly
They
work in
are
isolation.
territorial. Oh, okay. Thank you. That's it. But thank you for that that comment. It was something very, very new for me. Thank you.
Am I
Hello.
audible? Uh,
Yes,
Hello.
yes, you are audible.
I have three questions to ask you. Hello.
Yes, I
Yeah.
can hear you.
My first question is, what are the primary factors influencing the spatial distribution and home range of elusive cats in a given area?
So it is different for different species. For example, I work on fishing cat, so it is a wetland specialist. It can only survive in areas where wetlands exist. Similarly, for leopard cat, it needs close canopy forests or plantations, so it needs like a covered top, so it can only exist there. So for different species, it's different. But for so many, like for rusty spotted cat, it is difficult to say what exactly it needs because we don't have enough studies to say that. But yeah.
And my second question is, how do elusive cats adapt to human modified landscapes such as agricultural or urban areas?
Yeah, so that's very interesting. And as I was saying, like we need to study that more. But the main point is for most of these cats, 80% of their diet is rodents. So, and as you can imagine, in agricultural field, there's a lot of rodents, and that's how we try to tell farmers also that it's actually not doing anything bad for you. They are eating away the rodents, they're removing the pests, so they are good. So that's why we think that they have adapted to life in agricultural fields where there's a lot of food for them.
Okay, my last question is that we do face seasonal variations. So, what are the seasonal variations in the habitat use of these cats?
Yeah, so I would love if I would know the answer to this question, but we really don't know about seasonal variation. But as you can imagine, especially for cats that are living outside, when during harvesting of the crop versus when the crop field is intact, they would move out. So when the harvest is going on, many times they would find the farmers would find these kittens. So
Yeah.
we know that that time they just move out because there's no habitat left. So they rely on these seasonal habitats.
Thank
Hello,
you.
Hello.
hello. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are.
Yeah, yeah. First of all, at the outset, I congratulate you for all your patient research work for the past 5 years. So I've already put my questions in the chat. There's one question that is haunting me. Is there any genetic study between the difference of a domestic cat and the small cats, which makes them wild?
Yeah, there are no studies like this that what makes a domestic cat domestic and a wild cat wild, but we really don't know about these kind of questions. But they did similar kind of genetic studies for dogs and wolves, and they found that they were all wolves, and then some wolves went close to human settlements, and humans adopted them kind of, and then they became evolved into dogs. But we have really no such studies for cats.
Okay, the second part of the question is the local population, which are usually tribals, they do have an indigenous knowledge about the movement of such animals. And they are quite close to them without hurting them, harming them. I'm not talking about poachers. So, would you get some information from them?
Yes, yes, definitely. That's a very good point. Many time, local people know much
The
more about
tribes,
them.
especially
Yeah,
the
yeah.
tribes that are there,
Yes. Yeah, yeah. The
forest
lo-
living. Yeah.
yes, the local tribes have a lot of knowledge, and we were surprised that many times they have specific name for these cats as well, because it's very difficult to see them and you just see them running and you cannot differentiate. But they would have these different names, so that is a lot of untapped knowledge in them, and we should be able to ask them and know more about them.
Yeah. Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Ma'am, what are the other type of samples are you used for the DNA sequencing? Is it
So
possible to try?
I I mostly work with the fecal samples, poop samples, but you can extract DNA with just everything like hair samples, even eDNA, like soil and water. And even if like there's a lake and there's a leopard around the lake, people have been able to tell that there's a leopard nearby just by the water from the lake. So it is just amazing what all you can find from DNA and all kind of samples.
So you
Hmm? No,
hello.
Yes,
Am I
yes.
audible?
Yeah, after the completing of your DNA sequencing, then only you know this is the fishing cat or before that we don't know, right? I mean,
Yes, yes. Yeah, you have to sequence the DNA to know what is what.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
So I had a question.
Yes.
So after finding this cat of the cat, how will you track the cat? So basically, how will you get to know where the cat was and how will you find it?
Yeah, a very interesting question. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. But as I was telling, so let's say you have scat from two cats in two different parts of an area, and you extract DNA and you sequence the ATGC, that their genetic code, and then you try to see how similar both the cats are. And if both the cats are very similar, that means that they are moving from one place to another place, because your DNA would be similar to your parents' DNA as compared to my DNA. So if someone has your blood sample and my blood sample and your parents' blood sample, they would be able to identify that which are the parent and the child. So same thing we do for cats also, and we try to see whether their genetic code is similar or not. If it is similar, they are moving across. If it is not similar, they're not moving across. And you do this with hundreds of samples. So that's how.
Yes, but then once
Madam, I have
again,
a question. I have a question, madam.
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm from Guwahati, Assam. These cats are whether radio colored for observing their movement and other activities. Number one,
No, so
just like
right.
hmm.
So you can radio collar cats, but I have not worked with radio collaring, but it's very difficult and expensive, as you can imagine, because you have to catch the cat, put the radio collars on. They have a short shelf life. They cannot be there for the rest of their life. So it's very expensive technique, but you can do it. I have not done it, but you can do it.
But how you kept the movement? Have you observed the movement of these cats in wild?
I have observed, but for my study work, I use DNA to do it, as I was explaining to someone else. So we
Acha,
use
what do
DNA to
you,
track the movement.
right? Do you have these beavers and otters have any similarity with the cats?
No. Otters are evolutionarily, otters are very different, but especially with fishing cat, they live in the same areas where fishing cat lives. So otters also need water. Fishing cat also needs water, but they are very different species.
And regarding beavers?
They are also very different. They are much similar to otters, but very different from cats.
Okay, thank you.
audible, ma'am?
Ma'am,
Yes.
how to reach out to you for further questions and for projects in Pilibhit and everything?
You can reach out to me over mail. I have written my email ID here, so if anyone is interested, you can reach out. It's in the chat box.
Ma'am?
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Yes, you are audible.
Ma'am, any conservation program is going on these cats now?
No, not many conservation programs are going on. Some programs are going on mostly on fishing cat in eastern coast, but very few programs are going on.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, how much genetic difference is there between these domestic cats and these wild cats?
So for most of the wildcats, there's a lot of difference, but just as I was telling you that example of Asiatic wildcat. So there's just like that, there's a European wildcat. They are very similar. They are known as sister species. So the chance of hybridization and similarity is very high there. But in India, how similar they are, no one is looking at that. In Europe, they are doing that and they found they're very similar. Like 50% of the DNA is the domestic cat DNA now.
Ma'am,
Ma'am.
I want to ask why are the many cats, especially domestic cats, afraid of the water?
Sorry, this I have no answer to. I don't know why behaviorally. I also have a cat at home and I don't know why it is afraid of water. But in general, cats are very afraid of water.
Am I audible?
And ma'am, what is the survival rate of the small cats?
So it would be different. Like we don't have concrete answers for that. But as I was saying, in like these human areas, like agricultural fields, the survival rate is low because if they don't move when the crop is high versus the crop is harvested, I have seen it myself that many times the kittens are removed or they get killed in that process. So the survival rate, especially outside protected areas, is low.
And ma'am, hunting success rate?
For most of the predators, hunting success rate is very less. They say that only 10% of the time they're successful. I don't know for every species, but in general, they say it's less than 10%.
And how much of the small cats are hunted by the big cats?
Not a lot. We actually don't have many cases, but who knows, maybe it's happening and we are just not seeing. But as far as we know, it's not a lot. They share different habitats and I can imagine it must be difficult to catch another cat than compared to catch a deer, which is in a big group. So it's quite less.
And ma'am, what affects the vision of the cats? Means why they can see in the darker more than compared to humans?
Their eyes are very different. So we have two different kind of cells and for colors and light. So the cells that we have to capture light, they have much more of that. So that's why they can see in night as well.
Is there any study on roadkills about wildcats?
Yeah, many people are trying to record roadkills, and people do record roadkills, but there is lack of systematic study. But cats often face roadkill, especially like jungle cat faces a lot of roadkill because they are in these open habitats, which also includes roads as well. So,
Okay. Thank you for wonderful.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hello,
ma'am.
Yes,
yes.
Do
Okay.
they kill house domesticated chickens in rural community? domesticated chickens. Do they kill domesticated chickens in rural communities?
Yes. Yeah. So when I was talking about retaliatory killing, that's why people generally kill these cats, because they're known to take away either fishes or domestic chickens, or some people even report goats, but we don't know whether that is authentic, but they are known to take them away, especially because they're very close to human habitation. So that's why they are killed many times.
Hello.
Yes. Hello.
Hello. Am I
Yes.
audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
So this was a very new topic for me, and I've never thought about small cats in detail so much, and listening to it for the first time. So I just wanted to know if we are in a wild space, and like usually for big cats, you see a lot of signs like pug marks. There'll be scratches on trees, and there are a lot of signs of their presence. Is there any indications that we can look for small cats?
Yeah, so that's what I follow, but it's just little harder to see. So they also leave same pug marks, and won't scratch on trees, but they leave pug marks, and they are pretty visible. But for like, if you're going on a safari, it would be next to impossible to see that, because it's difficult to see a tiger pug mark, and this would be like 1/4 the size of tiger pug mark. So they also, like all cats, generally like to walk on these trails, which are clear paths, and they would avoid walking on grass or leaf litter if possible. So they all leave these signs by pug marks, and you can follow any cat using pug marks if you have a keen eye.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such a wonderful session. Now the session is about to end. For further doubts, you can contact the speaker. The mail ID will be provided in the group.
Thank you so much.